I'm going to invite you, if you are able, to and feel comfortable, to move here towards the front of the sanctuary. One of the gifts and challenges of our sound system is that it's a little bit easier to hear if you're sitting in the first half and not the back half of the sanctuary. So as we do that, I want to welcome folks who are joining us online. We have some folks who are going to be participating that way as well. To lay out our agenda today, and then we'll open with a word of prayer, because prayer is important. We're going to receive a couple of really critical updates from our trustees about work that's happening in our building, from our Director of Operations, Andrew, about where we are financially so far for the year. We'll receive some additional updates about our conference relationship, both where we are in terms of paying apportionments for the year, and then we'll receive some updates about upcoming staff changes and some programmatic changes here in the life of the church. We'll have some time for question and answers at the end, but what I'd like to ask that we do, just so that we're good stewards of our time, is that we let every person speak up here, and then we'll receive questions about the various things that we've heard. Does that sound like a plan? Are you all able to hear me? No, you're not able to hear me. Are you able to hear me better here? There we go. That means the microphone's actually doing what it's supposed to do. I don't have to hold it here. That's good news. That's really good news. Well, friends, before we do anything else, why don't we open with a word of prayer? And I'll lead us in that. God of grace and God of glory, you have been faithful generation after generation to your people called Silver Spring United Methodist Church. As we gather now to receive updates about what's happening in the life of our congregation and community, help us to ask good questions that help us move more deeply into the discipleship that you call us to. Help us to ask good questions that allow us to create new ways of being in community together. Help us to ask good questions so that we can live into more fully the work that you're calling us to do right now, right here in this place. We ask this all in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, and through the power of your Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen. So I'll begin by sharing a couple of updates about various things that are happening in the life of the church. As I do that, I'm going to ask for a volunteer who might be willing to hand out something for me. Is there somebody who'd be willing to do that? Elizabeth? Great. As the staff have been preparing for our fall program year, one of the things that we were mindful of, a couple of the things that we were mindful of that we wanted to name, is that the burden of carrying two services, both for our volunteer staff, Mary Cutts can talk about this a little bit, as can Ryan Lincoln and others, was becoming a lot. It was a lot for our staff to manage as well. And with the advent of the technology we need, or the installation of the technology we need to stream our services, we began to have a conversation about how we might better create space for people to reconnect in community here in our building and online, how we could increase our opportunities for Christian education for all ages, deepening opportunities for discipleship and formation, how we could continue our strong tradition of excellent worship in a way that allowed our whole community to gather, and how we could offer even more radical hospitality, both for people who call our congregation home and for those who we hope will someday call our congregation home. Out of the kind of mix of that conversation has come a new plan for the fall in the way that we worship and gather on Sunday mornings. The handout that you're getting outlines a lot of this, but let me give you the highlights now, and we'll have time for questions later. Beginning on September 11th, which is our program kickoff, we'll move to a single service model of gathering on Sunday mornings. What that means is the building will open at 8:30. Childcare will be provided for people who have children that need childcare up to pre-K. Beginning at 9 o'clock, we'll have an integrated education hour, meaning that people of all ages will be in some kind of Christian education, whether that's our children, our youth, or our adults. So everybody's learning together at the same time in our building. At 10 o'clock, we'll gather for a worship service here in our sanctuary space that builds on the strong tradition of hybrid gathering that we've had during the pandemic, meaning we'll have a variety of music and musical styles present in worship, celebrating both our praise band, our chancel choir, our handbell choirs, our children's choir, all of those things. And then once that service is done, we'll be able to move right out the back doors of the sanctuary and into our parlor, where we'll have opportunity for fellowship hour and coffee, and opportunities for people to just chat and be connected to one another. That will also serve as an additional time for us to gather for committee meetings, to gather for congregational gatherings like this, for additional adult education, those kinds of things. So again, the highlights of this: 9 o'clock, integrated education hour; 10 o'clock, worship; 11 to 11:15, I'm giving myself a little wiggle room for my sermon. 11 to 11:15 will be our fellowship hour, and our programming in the building will conclude at 12:30 p.m. or thereabouts. During worship, I know for parents this is particularly important. In addition to having childcare available throughout the day, from 10:15 to the end of worship will be an opportunity for children who are pre-K through 5th grade to gather for Children's Chapel with Miss Marie and some of her servant leaders in the chapel. That will integrate parts of our children's choir ministry, and the children will be engaging in the same scriptures that we'll be learning here in our sanctuary space. So that, in theory, if parents wanted to talk with their kids about the scripture that was read, they're going to be able to have that conversation. Children will come back to be with us in worship for the closing hymn and benediction every Sunday, so parents won't have to travel anywhere to go pick their kids up. And on sacramental Sundays, when we're celebrating communion or baptism, our children will gather with us for those. So that's the kind of basic move that we're looking at making. And you'll see outlined there the vision that we have for this, right? It's going to create more opportunities for radical hospitality, right? We know that we want people to feel from the minute they walk in the door that they're welcome here, that there's a place for them here, and that they're wanted here. Okay? People want to be seen, and we want to help people be seen for who they are. It's going to create opportunities for deeper and ever-deepening discipleship, which is critical. Right? Opportunities for Christian education and spiritual formation that take us deep to the roots of our faith and not simply at the surface. We've got a strong tradition of that already in the life of our congregation. We want to expand the ways that we're able to do that through a variety of program offerings. It's going to create opportunities for even more excellent worship by allowing our worship staff and volunteers to focus their efforts and energy on a single service that's very, very well done. Right? And it helps all people encounter the living presence of God in ways that are transformative. So those are the big things that I wanted to name related to that change. One other additional change that I'll share is coming up here in the life of our congregation is we have a staff transition happening in November. Many of you will know this already, but Marianne Willow, our Director of Music Ministries, has been in ministry in some form with our congregation for, 40 years, Marianne? Can we applaud Marianne for the gift of those 40 years? I will readily admit that Marianne did not want applause, so I apologize, Marianne, but it's applaudable. Marianne, after those 40 years, has decided to retire. Her last Sunday with us here at SSUMC will be November 20th. That's the last Sunday before Advent. Our staff parish committee, led by James Manley, Carl Coburn, and Grace Cho, I've seen all three of you. You want to stand up and wave so people can see you? There we go. Have been hard at work already with Mary Ann to create position descriptions for an interim director of music ministries. Our intention, because we know that this worship change is happening, is to take a little bit of time to live into what that new worship experience is going to look like with an interim director of music ministries that will be with us from November, the beginning of Advent, through the end of the Easter season. That'll give us a chance to kind of figure out who we're going to be and how we're going to be before we offer the job to a full-time permanent person sometime after Easter. The plan there really is not to say that the interim can't apply for the full-time position, but rather that we want to give ourselves a little bit of room to figure out who and what we need to be. That position will become available on Tuesday. Tuesday? Did we decide Tuesday or Monday? Carl has spoken. It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday. So that position will go live on Tuesday. If you know of persons you think might be interested in that interim position, you can, of course, share that position description with them. We can make that available to you. We're going to have plenty of opportunities to celebrate Mary Ann over the course of the next couple of months. I told Mary Ann we couldn't get away with not celebrating Mary Ann. So we're going to have plenty of opportunities to do that, including the consecration and celebration of our renovated organ a little bit later in the year. Two other quick things that I'll share with you before I hand the mic off to Andrew for our operations update. The first is that we are in the process now of beginning to have an intentional conversation about our leadership structure here in the life of the church. Let me just ask you really quickly, show of hands, how many of you have served on a board or committee here at the church at some point in your tenure? There are a lot of you. Let's applaud that. That's a gift. We have a number of committed leaders here in the life of our congregation. How many of you have served more years than you anticipated serving on one of those boards or committees? That's a fair number of hands too. We recognize that as we move into this new season of ministry together, there are a couple of ways in which our congregation began to move to a different leadership structure that got paused for a variety of important reasons following the departure of Reverend Rachel Cornwell. This fall, we'll begin a conversation that will involve the whole congregation about moving toward a unified board that is in line with the Book of Discipline, which currently we don't have. Right now, you may know, we have an administrative board. Ryan's our administrative board chair. We have a council on ministries. Michelle's our council on ministries chair. And then a variety of committees who comprise the administrative board and ministry teams that comprise the church council. What that's led to is a lot of folk having to spend a lot of energy doing a lot of work that could be done by a smaller group of people. And it's meant that for a variety of reasons, as I've heard in my congregational meetings, as people have shared with me, that people are burned out. Is anybody feeling kind of burned out? It's okay to admit that you feel burned out. Andrew is our truth teller. We're grateful. Yes, people are feeling some weariness. And so what we hope is that whatever model we arrive at will allow us to make decisions more easily, steward our energy better, and allow all of us to engage in ministry without having to go through all the checks and balances of 47 different decision makers. Does that make sense? No decisions will be made without the full congregation being engaged in that decision. So let me name that. The entire congregation will be engaged in any decision and any change that's made to our leadership structure. What we're committed to doing is making sure that that structure is in alignment with our Book of Discipline, which has its upsides too, has its downsides, as many of us know, but it has its upsides, and allows us to do the work that we need to do in this place right now. So, just wanted you to know that that conversation was happening. The second thing I'll share with you is that we are preparing for our annual stewardship campaign to begin in October of this year. Reverend Kathy Barden is going to co-chair that team. Kathy, would you raise your hand so folks can see you? We're grateful for Kathy and for her offering her many years of professional experience doing stewardship work in the local church. That campaign will run from October through November. So, get ready. We're going to have lots of opportunity to have lots of conversation about the future of our congregation and the gifts that we have that are going to help us step into the future together. Kathy's going to help us make that happen, and we're grateful for her and the team that's forming. All right, with that, I'm going to pass it off to Andrew and find my mask.
Just turn it on and it'll work. Well, thank you. So I have a few updates, and I'll start with our finance update first, and then we'll go into some trustees update with myself and Kevin. Sorry. So we are about 8 months in our fiscal year this year. Our year starts January, ends in December. We are experiencing really still positive financials, right? We're expecting to end this year in a positive net income, meaning we won't end in a deficit. We have received about 60% of our pledged giving, so it's a little behind this time last year, where last year we would have received about 80% of our pledged giving. So we encourage you all to continue to meet your pledge, reach out to myself, the church office, if you need to update that pledge. But also the finance committee and I and Pastor Will have been talking a lot about our budget for next year. As you all have heard, we really are thinking about radical hospitality. We really are thinking about ways that we can engage in reentry well in this church. And so that means that there's some different investments that we'll have to make, just not in our physical space, but also within the life of staff, within the life of ministry, within the life of different services. And so we are right now engaging staff for the budget process for next year for FY23, to hear what staff need and want to be able to carry out ministry in the ways that we envision, especially with this new structure that Pastor Will just outlined. From that, the Finance Committee will come back together, we'll look at that budget, and really have to determine to make some hard decisions. I will tell you now that we already know that we're projecting a bit of a deficit for next year. And Pastor Will be talking about that more throughout the next couple months. But we know that in order to really guard ourselves in some of the new services, this idea of bringing people back into our sanctuary and into the life of the worship, it's going to require a financial investment. And so the Finance Committee is aware, and we're coming up with solutions, but we're going to be asking all of us to stretch with us in FY23 to try to close that gap that we'll have. That gap will, right now, we're still working on the numbers. We know it will be a gap. We're not sure exactly how big of a gap it will be, but in the coming months, you'll be hearing from us and from the Finance Committee around that. The budget will need to be approved in time for Charge Conference, which will be in November. So you'll be hearing back from us once the admin board has approved that budget. You'll be hearing back from us to talk about kind of what the plans will be for FY23 and what we'll need from all of us collectively to do to be able to meet the needs and be able to make the right investments in the church. This is a little bit of a financial update, and tied really with finances is buildings and our wonderful buildings. And I hope that this is a very nice place to be, because for so long we have had issues, we've had building challenges that we've not necessarily been able to address. But I will tell you that the trustees, and with Kevin's leadership, Mary Margaret, and I know Marilyn, who just had to leave a bit early, have been working really, really, really hard to address the tons of challenges, deferred maintenance that have been within our church properties, not just at a downtown location, but also in our parsonages. And so I'm happy to say that, starting off with at least one great announcement. If you've been through the hallway where the offices are, you will see that office redesign project is starting, where we will be making those rooms where there were offices to be rooms where folks can be able to gather and connect, both hybrid, in person, as well with the technology to do virtual connections. And so that's all connected back to the vision of radical hospitality. That's connected back to welcoming people and connecting with people in different ways. And so that project will be completed by the end of October. So you'll start to see a very different feel kind of in that corridor, from the office to the chapel. You'll see different paint, different furniture. It will look very different, but it will be a way to start to engage all of our members in a different way. And so I'm really excited about that. That project is happening, and you will start to see by the end of October kind of what that looks like. As well, if you look back, you saw that the parlor has went through some parts of renovations, and I'm excited about what's about to happen there to be able to connect back to welcoming people into our space in a different way. And then I'll also just say we have engaged for a new AV system that will be installed by the end of this year. The AV system will allow for greater microphones and speakers, but it also will allow for us to stream our service and allow for folks to connect with us from wherever they are. That is a real huge project that we've been working on for quite some time, and I want to say that we are at the space where we're now looking for the installation. And then lastly, before I turn it over to Kevin to talk about a few other trustees-related projects, I will say that one of the biggest projects that we've had is around our HVAC. If you remember back some time ago when Pastor Will and I did a video update, we talked about we engaged an engineering firm to be able to come in and give us an assessment of where we are. Because at some point, when we sold the Four Corners location, we thought we're going to run and we're going to get this HVAC stuff taken care of. But then really took some steps back and really with the advice of the trustees to say, you know what, let's make sure we're getting the right thing. I mean, I was talking to Eleanor just a minute ago about let's make sure that we're spending money and we're getting the right things that we need, right? And so I think that when we think about the HVAC project, that same thing still exists. And so we had an assessment done, and that assessment has allowed us to go out and find contractors to tell us how much it will cost, right? What all do we need and how much will it cost? That cost came back much higher than we've ever budgeted for, for about $5 or $6 million. And so we said, okay, we understand that, and we figured that there will be some significant costs. But at this stage in the project, we are planning to bring on a project manager who's going to help us to really fine-tune that cost, to fine-tune kind of what we need and what we don't need and what we may be able to phase in over time. As that project manager comes on board, we'll be able to really drill down and understand who's going to be the right vendor to be able to provide the services that we need. We expect that in January or February of 2023 is when we'll see the project starting. And it will probably take us all the way through 2023 before we will have completed the HVAC projects as well as with the roofing project. So that's a pretty long project. It will be at least 12 months, but ultimately the benefit is after it's all said and done, we will have a greater utility, greater accessibility, and also ability to be flexible, right? We also are looking at solar options. We're looking at other types of options that will allow for greater and long-term sustainability of our church. And so there is a lot happening in the life of our building, and I'm so grateful to the trustees for their work on making sure that we are able to do this. So I'll turn it over to Kevin. Sorry.
Okay. Thanks, Andrew. Okay. For those I've never met, I'm Kevin Perry, and I'm the chair of the trustees midway through my 3-year cycle on the board of trustees. Andrew's already given a lot of previews into some of the things we've been working on. Very quickly, I want to share with you all a few things that I've discovered in my tenure on the trustees. And one was very recently. There are 150 individual rooms in this building. I see some looks on people's faces like, really? And then other people nodding, yes, of course, right? And due to the complexity and the size of this building, the issues we're addressing don't really have a one-size-fits-all approach. And that ties back into what Andrew brought up about having our needs assessed and then making the decision to bring on a project manager to handle particularly the HVAC project. But that will also probably bleed over into the planning of some connected projects that we're going to need to take care of. Of the laundry list of needs for this physical structure, we really had to prioritize HVAC being a larger one, big ticket item, but it's also tied into a safety necessity for our fire detection system. And that will both of those projects require some upgrades and reconfiguring of the electrical system here in the building. They're necessary. And these also, even the electrical system ties into things like accessibility to the building. In order to have the proper kind of lighting, which we are having installed right now, the narthex is newly illuminated. The Georgia Avenue portico is going to be worked on this week to bring those lights back into function, and all the other exterior lights over the next 2 weeks. Hopefully by September 11th, we'll have everything up and going. The electrical system can handle that, but as soon as we start putting in, upgrading the fire detection system and the kinds of controls you need for a modern HVAC system, then we'd be in the dark pretty quickly, along within the concomitant other kinds of problems. So it's a big project for those three things. Let's see, a few other updates on things that are coming up. You know, some of you remember years ago, and Carl likes talking about this sometimes, but you know, a Metro bus took out our sign, and we finally have a new sign on its way, but we had to go through the whole permitting process, and we couldn't just replace what we had. So that's on its way. What else do we have? I mean, those are some immediate things about it. Roofing is on our list, but it takes a little bit of a backseat to some of the other things. The roof in general is keeping out the moisture, but we do know that the roofing overall needs an assessment and some repair and replacement, but the other things had to take a higher priority. One aspect of a lot of this work goes back into the idea of radical hospitality and accessibility. So having these offices reconfigured here on the basically grade level entrance into our building allows those spaces to be used by everyone and anyone in our congregation, instead of it having to go up or down stairs. And some of those rooms, even if it can go up and down the stairs readily, even the rooms themselves aren't necessarily all that welcoming. But this allows us to put it at the forefront when you come into the structure. There's the place to be welcomed, right there in that hallway. All in, this is, and I misquoted the number to James when he asked about it last week. This project is a 7-figure project just to take care of the fire detection system, the electrical system, and as you already heard about HVAC. We're looking at something between $9 and $11 million. And this is not something that's been lightly or flippantly come to. It's, you know, you can't replace just one tire on your car when they're all flat. And if you've been running on the flat tires for a while, you have to do some other work too. So just being upfront and honest, there's a lot that we have to go on to get going. Before I turn the mic over to whoever's next to speak, I do want to say a thank you to people who are at home watching, and those of you who are here, for everyone who came out on August 6th to jump in and help do some much needed deep cleaning and decluttering of the building. It's already seen a change. The dumpsters are still out there, but someone said, actually, my children said to me, oh, look, the dumpsters are still here, but those are not the same things that we put in it, right? We filled one on that day, and the metal one about 2/3 of the way, and those have already been taken away and emptied, and there's more in there because of the current projects in the offices. But that August 6th day, to me, as a member of this congregation, was a real way to kickstart coming back and being here as a community of faith and support with each other. I mean, we were here working together and laughing and maybe not crying, but commiserating a little, but really a lot of hard work and a lot of devotion went in that day. And I feel like it put us in a good place to move forward with, again, making this place radically hospitable. I'm going to change that up a little bit. So, and when we're all done, if you have any questions, I'll answer them the best I can, probably with some help from Andrew on some specifics.
So our lay leader, Daniel Colbert, could not be with us today at the last minute. I've just got a couple of quick updates to share with you about our annual conference, Cycle and Life Together. First, an important date, November 8th at 7 p.m. I don't see you pulling out your calendars. November 8th at 7 p.m. is our charge conference. I want to encourage all of us to plan to be present at that gathering. We'll approve our budget. We'll be approving leaders for our 2023-2024 program year and beyond, and we'll likely be voting on some of these issues that you've been hearing about today. It's going to be a really important gathering. I hope that you will make the time to be there. I know that there have been some questions about our conference relationship given the realities of the Global Methodist Church and the Wesleyan Covenant Association and the continuing delay of our General Conference. What I can share with you now is that the conference chancellor and others are continuing to help congregations who are choosing to disaffiliate with the United Methodist Church to do that. There is a lot of complex legality around all of that. And so what we're finding is that in every annual conference, churches are having to do it differently. There's no one right answer right now. And in fact, there are several cases pending before our Judicial Council, that's kind of the Supreme Court of the United Methodist Church, if you want to think about it like that, that will determine how that process moves forward into the future. What I can share with you is that the leadership of the church and I remain committed to staying in the United Methodist Church and working for a fully inclusive United Methodist Church with the understanding that even if the Global Methodist Church takes off, even if the Wesleyan Covenant Association leaves, there's still going to be harmful language in our book of discipline preventing the full inclusion of LGBTQIA persons in the life of the church. So our work through our LGBTQ justice team and the work of Reverend Michelle, among all of our staff team, continues to be advocating for full inclusion and LGBTQIA justice in the life of our church and in our community. We're deeply committed to that. In terms of our apportionments for the year, who knows what apportionments are? Who does not know what in the world I'm talking about when I say apportionments? Anybody? All right, so we're fairly familiar with what an apportionment is. That's a portion of our budget that we tithe, that we give to the United Methodist Church for the sake of doing ministry all around the world. Many of you know our apportionments are currently $122,000 a year, and for the last number of years, we've not been able to meet that full number. With the help of Andrew and our finance team, we made a commitment to paying $50,000 of that this year, and we are well on track to accomplishing that commitment, with the additional goal of reaching $100,000 in apportionment giving next year. In addition to that work, we're also taking a hard look at our fund balance report, which is the report that gets turned into the annual conference that they use to calculate our apportionments, to make sure that we're doing everything we can possibly to get that number to a place that's equitable given what's happening in the life of our church right now. So we're working with the conference on that, even as we're also taking on this additional effort to try to pay our apportionments and be faithful in that commitment. With that, let me just really quickly invite Ryan and Michelle up. And if y'all would just come up and introduce yourselves and kind of what your role is in the life of the church, any updates from the Administrative Council or the Council on Ministries, and then we'll have some time for questions.
Hello, can you hear me? I'm Michelle Riley. Aaron Cirilla just gave me the thumbs up, I assume for volume or for just being me. Today is my birthday. So I'm chairing the Council on Ministries currently, and Ryan's chairing the Administrative Board. Ryan and I worked together previously when I chaired the Administrative Board, so I've been on a big tour of all the committees in this church for many years. And thanks to everybody who serves on the Council of Ministries and the Administrative Board, Kevin, it's a lot of work for everyone involved. Thank you. So for Council on Ministries, we're currently going to be working with the Administrative Board to try and bring our committee structure more into line with the committee structure that's envisioned by the Book of Discipline, which is something that we'll be undertaking in conjunction with the Administrative Board over the next few months. We're also really excited to see the social hours that are planned with one worship service, because we had been working towards having more congregational time, after services, and we had them hosted by different groups. Racial Justice and Reconciling Ministries hosted one in June. So this is something that we think will be really important in bringing people back to worship and allowing us to be together, which is, of course, the first ingredient in moving forward together. And also, we also are excited to be welcoming the children back to Sunday school, Growing in Faith. Sorry, Marie. I've been teaching Sunday school too long. I still call it Sunday school. But that's a little bit of what we're up to, so we're very excited moving forward. And I'll turn it over to Ryan.
Thank you. You join me. All right, this is Ellie. She's a very important member. She's a shadow right now. So my name is Ryan Lincoln. I'm the chair of the admin board. Really, I have the easiest job just because it's a team of really dedicated, hardworking people. Kevin and the finance team, the trustees, the finance team, SPRC. There's been a lot going on, right? I think as we've been talking about what looks like to re-enter the space, renovate some portions, the radical hospitality. I'm incredibly excited. I think I've been Zooming with all you for the last 3 years, it seems, and I love seeing you all in little boxes. It's been enjoyable. I'm excited to see us all in one space here. I think the plans that Pastor Will, the clergy staff, and council ministries have put together to sort of have this 9, 10, and 11 o'clock time for us all is exceptional. I'm really excited for it. As far as like what the board's doing, you heard a lot of it. There's a ton of stuff going on, right? And I would love for you, if you're interested and want to know more, I will give 2 plugs. One is every 3rd Tuesday of the month, we have our board meeting, and it's open. The links are in the calendar. It's virtual right now. We'll probably be starting to do something, maybe once these spaces are ready, we'll do a hybrid approach. So please come join, listen to our conversation, provide input. You're completely welcome. And then also, as we start reimagining what the leadership looks like, I know there are lots of hands raised already, so that means you're seasoned veterans on serving on committees. So please, we want everyone to be engaged. We want to make sure people are aware of what's going on, and there's nothing to hide. So thank you. I'm around for questions, and if you ever have questions, you can always chat me during the Zoom. I'm there as well. So I'll hand this back over to Pastor Will. Before I get to
We'll sing happy birthday in a minute. If that's it. Oh, you've already got it 4 times. Okay, so we won't sing happy birthday, but be sure to say happy birthday to Michelle before we leave today. Friends, before we open it up for questions, just to highlight a couple of other things. The first is that we would not be where we are today and being able to do some of the exciting things we're doing without the dedicated and faithful leadership of all of you who are sitting in the pews. So I want you to turn to one of your neighbors and say thank you. And then turn to another neighbor and say thank you. This is not a ship that has a single captain. This is a community, a collective of people moving together, and all of us have a role to play in it. You're a vital part of that, so thank you. I want to acknowledge our staff who are with us in the room. So Marie Matthews in the back, who keeps us all together all the time. Marie, can we say thank you to Marie? And Reverend Catherine Brown, who is on our extended clergy team and our teaching deacon. And of course, our indomitable Director of Operations, Andrew Kirkland. And Marianne Willow, our ever-faithful Director of Music Ministries. Again, just to highlight, we're a team. We do this together, and we're grateful for the chance to be your partners in ministry in that. With that, I want to open it up for questions and conversation. And I think what we'll do is I will answer questions that you may have for me as we go, but I'll be out in the crowd passing the mic. So is there anybody with questions?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Katrina Stone. I think some of you do. I'll take this off. Okay. So thank you very much for all of these announcements. I don't want to leave anybody out at all because this has been such a community, but I just really want to acknowledge Ryan Lincoln and Mary Couts specifically for sort of carrying us through this nearly 3 years. And again, it's probably everyone in this room has, worked towards the virtual space, but just specifically thank you for everything that you've done. But on that note, I would just really encourage us all to be in prayer for how to make this transition so that it's not passive for our community members who are not going to be able to return in person. Yes, it's going to have hybrid, and I'm not going to go on about that, but just that it's going to be different for them than in Zoom. And just to be in prayer and to still be thoughtful about ways in which that might be improved. The second thing and the last thing is I was always someone who went to the 9:30 service, and one of many things that really drew me into that is the ways that joys and concerns were expressed was really, really deeply moving and intimate and in a small space. And there was just something really unique about it. And I was raised Catholic, so I'm not casting aspersions on Catholicism at all. But my feeling was sort of that in church, whether it's, won't even say which denomination, joys and concerns were sort of, it was like birthdays would be acknowledged, anniversaries, someone in the hospital, someone who had passed. There were sort of like these categories, if you will. Whereas joys and concerns, again, in 9:30, I remember, I'll just say by name, I remember like Mercedes when she was younger, Elizabeth and Rob's daughter, being joyful that like something happened in junior high school. She's out of college now. But like, it was sort of like things could be like very small or like really heavy. And where I'm going with this is that in Zoom, people can put P for private and share something. And, I'll say by name, Rebecca's sitting here and others, there were some things that I was going through and still am and won't share here, where I would put things in private. And there's so many people in this room who would reach out and touch me in a way. But these were not things that I would be comfortable, particularly because they're about someone who I won't name. I didn't want to violate confidentiality. And so they're not things that are comfortable being on social media or YouTube and so forth. So this isn't the solution. I'm open to other ideas. But I would just really encourage people, thinking about that 9 to 10 o'clock hour, whether it's 9:30 to 10, totally appreciate the part for education, Reverend Catherine. Yes, so I don't want to detract for that. But I just wonder if we could be thoughtful about what might a smaller room that could be equipped in a hybrid space to have like a private conversation where church members could gather in a place, whether they're in person or in Zoom together, and sort of be sharing those joys and concerns. Again, small or large, where then it's not broadcast out to the world. So again, I'm not trying to dictate what the answers are, just trying to put things out there. So, thank you.
That's very good.
Other questions that folks have about what's been shared today? Anything else?
Hi, I'm Becky Eager. My question might be an easy yes or no answer. But I was just wondering if the engineering report, once that's available and has been delivered to the trustees or whoever it's being delivered to, is that something that's going to be available if any of the rest of us want to take a look at it?
Yes, and feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to share that report with you all. I think it's really informative.
All right. Anything else that we would want to ask?
Thank you, Rebecca McGinnis, proud and happy spouse of Scott, whom you all know. One of my concerns, as I hear and understand that we're going to have a lot of needs for teachers, early and also during the worship service is how can we encourage parents, helpers to help more. It's always been a challenge to get enough teachers, and it's a growing concern.
One of the things I'll say just really quickly about that is that my expectation is that the Time and Talent Survey is going to help us begin to get a sense for where people's energy is. We've had, like I said, 85 respondents. We had 86 as of the close of service today. We're hoping for 120. So let me encourage all of us here, if we know somebody that has not yet completed that, or perhaps somebody we've not seen in worship that we would want to invite back, that's a great way to do that. I will also say that personal invitation is one of the very best ways to get somebody involved in something. So if you know somebody who has gifts and graces, you can let Marie know, you can let me know, you can let Daniel know, and we'll happily reach out to them, or you can reach out to them to help them get connected in the volunteering life of our church.
Hi, just a quick note. Since we've gone hybrid, I have noticed that there are no signs or any notifications like out in the narthex to tell people that they are being streamed. And I think we should really do that, especially for our children who might be online. It might be a privacy issue for some parents or for some people who are coming to church and maybe don't want somebody to know where they are. So I think we really need to be more mindful of letting people know that they are live.
That's a great point. Thank you. Especially now that we're finally able to do the thing. Last Sunday was the first Sunday, this was the second, and we'll continue living into this process. So as you see things like this, please let us know. Other questions?
Following on that, just as a member of Foundry, where we have live streamed for a while, there is a section of the congregation that you can see and then that you can't see. So I'm wondering if there's something like that where like some of the back pews wouldn't be seen on the live stream, for example, that could help with those privacy concerns.
Let me use this as a plug to say, if you have ideas for things, begin to plug into ministry teams that are helping plan this ministry. That's the place where we need that information. So our worship ministries team is forming. We're going to gather on August 28th, right after worship. If you've got ideas about how we can even live more deeply into excellent worship here at the church, please, please, please join us. I thought I saw another hand. Anybody else? Yes.
Thank you for your question about the engineering plans. Andrew and I just chatted. We're going to try and connect those into the e-news. So you don't have to worry about sending an email to request that. We'll try and get that so everyone can, if they choose to read it, they can have access to it through the e-news. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else for the good of the whole? So the last piece of information that I'll share with you, I think, is probably the most important, and it's just a very, I think, basic piece of information. We have what it takes to do what we need to do. So I've said it in the pulpit, I'll say it again here. We have what it takes to do what it is we need to do. $11 million sounds like a terrifying number, right? Anybody kind of like catch your breath when you heard that number? 151 rooms sounds a little daunting, but I have no doubt that with our staff leadership, with our lay leadership, and with some creative thought, we're going to find ways to move together in community into the future. As Ruth could tell you, for instance, when they were building this building, right, Ruth? They found how many active springs were there? Do you remember? 6. This building sits on 16. This building sits on 16 active springs, and yet still they were able to build. If they can do that, then we can figure out how to deal with 151 rooms and an HVAC that sometimes makes us want to pull out our hair. We've got what it takes. And so let's continue this conversation, not just in these kinds of gatherings, but in our small groups, in our classes, in our ministry teams. Let's commit to showing up, to ad board meetings and to congregational gatherings like this, because together as we do that, I think we're going to find the insight, the wisdom, the ideas, the questions that we need to do even better tomorrow than we're doing today. And with that, I might ask, Reverend Catherine, not to put you on the spot, but would you close us in a word of prayer? You know, they teach us in seminary to always be ready to preach, pray, or die. I'm ready to do at least 2 of those right now. So.
Thanks for calling on me for the second rather than the last in that litany. Let us pray. God, you brought your people into Egypt before you brought them out. And you brought them through the wilderness before you led them into the promised land. We may not know where we are on this journey, but if we're journeying with you, we will end up where you need us to be. Help us to claim and to step forward in that assurance, trusting the one who has brought us through and remembering that us includes those who have long gone before and those who will come after. Strengthen us for this place and this time to be the link in your chain that you need us to be. And as we go forth from here, help us persist in prayer that we can be part of doing your will on earth as it is done in heaven. Amen.
Another announcement that I'll just share briefly, and we can get up and move if we need to get up and move. In order to help pay for and fund the hospitality project in the parlor, we are opening up a special fund for those of you who might want to give above and beyond your normal giving to the church to help us extend radical hospitality to our community. That special fund can be found on our website, silverspringumc.org/give, and the name of the fund is simply Pastor's Appeal. So any funds given to that fund between now and the end of September, is that what we said, Andrew? Will be used to help fund the work that's going to happen in the parlor to create a hospitable, welcoming space for our congregation and community to gather. So if you feel called to help create that space, I'd encourage you to give. Thank you.